Think it all happens in Silicon Valley? You thought wrong.
RedBubble is an online art gallery and community for artists globally, artists, designers and photographers. It's a marketplace for the designers, it's a place where people can come and buy unique designs and unique art. That's always a tricky question. Naming a website is not an easy thing, primarily because it's hard to get the URL. We set up in 2006 when we were getting the URL. And so we're trying to get a name which was not too defining about exactly something specific, but also evoke something. And so we ended up with the name RedBubble because it was met some tests. It was spellable. We could get the URL. The trademark was available globally. With the big things, and then it said something a little bit in terms of it feels warm and inviting and friendly. For me, I think that we've been a little bit casual for the last while in the way in which we've educated people, and that we've allowed people who've got educated out of creating art, they've got educated out of creating things which are important to them. And so it's a relatively new thing. Historically, art was what was created and shared within a community, very similar to music. And the advent of really music, recorded music since the end of the last century, and art for a while has been that people don't produce it and they don't engage with it. It's something which you view rather than something which you actually share in a much more dynamic way within a community. And I think art's actually really important because it speaks to the essence of who we are and what we're doing and how we think about things. So for me, art which is in and of a community, which is shared within a community, is really important. And so what RedBubble is designed to do is to create that sense of the intrinsic importance of art and creativity, and to make sure that that can be readily shared. We don't have a separate, we don't sort of speak about elite artists and all of the rest have been passive, all the rest of us have been passive consumers. We have a much more dynamic relationship between the art and the community. The way in which we do it is we think of ourselves as providing a platform for the artists. So it's a platform which has a number of different components. Some of those we don't charge for it at all, like the marketplace. People can put up stuff for free, and the community, people can put up stuff, they can engage in the community for free. The part which we do charge for is where we actually provide a print-on-demand service. And you'll see around me there's different works where we've done printed things for the artists. They set their markup, whatever they think they're worth. We say all we're doing is providing the printing service. So if they think their art is worth 25% more, or 50% more, or 500% more, they get to keep all of that. So what we do is we set a base price on the printing, and that might be as a t-shirt, which is one like I'm wearing, or as a frame print, or as a card, or a calendar, or a sticker, whatever, and then the artist sets a markup, which they keep 100% of that markup. The big thing about selling art online is you can actually be very specific, and you can actually get to a much larger amount of inventory. Just by way of example, up in my local area there's a cafe, and I approached that cafe, and I live up in the Dandenong Ranges, which is outside of Melbourne, a beautiful rural area outside of Melbourne, and I approached the cafe and I said, would you be interested in having art from the local area there? And they said, of course we would be. And so we could create I could create 20 artists with 20 works, and it's a rolling exhibition. It's on there permanently about work specifically around to the Dandenong Ranges. And so we've got our spring show coming up now. Now, as within galleries, it's actually, or within sort of very narrow view, it's actually quite hard to get very specific like that. So to have work which is just about the Dandenong Ranges, or just about some specific thing which somebody is interested in. So we've got on RedBubble, there's now about 5 million odd images, and so people can have very narrow interests. And I'm interested in this t-shirt, which is a little boy whistling. Not many people are necessarily going to be interested in that, so maybe you're not going to have hundreds of copies of that printed off, but for the few of us who are interested, it's actually quite appealing. So the thing from an online perspective is you can appeal to people's much more specific, narrow interests. You're not just talking about single branded commodities, really. You're talking about things which are quite specific and relevant to people individually. it's a really important topic, and I think it's both an important topic and it's a slightly misunderstood topic. So certainly on RedBubble we have a whole series of ways in which we try and protect people's copyright interests. So it's very easy to report copyright violations. We try and prevent people from right mouse butt clicking on things, so you can have a clear GIF over your work. There's a whole, and we actively investigate anything to do with copyright violations. All that being said though, once your work is on the internet, it is in a public forum. You can't no longer say that it's within your own home. And I will say though, it's not dissimilar to whether it's been published in any other way. If you publish your work in a magazine, I can get a magazine here, that if I was to scan that in, if I was to scan in an image from here, that would be at much higher resolution than you would get it off RedBubble. So the image itself, which you can get off RedBubble, is a very low resolution image. So you've got to sort of recognise that you are putting your work into the public sphere when you put it on the internet, and that's not dissimilar to if it was to be published in a magazine. And then you've got to it's incumbent upon sites like RedBubble to try and to do everything in their interest to protect the copyright of the artist. But it is out there. It is published effectively once it's on the internet. I think what's happening on the internet is we're seeing an evolution of e-commerce. In its early days, particularly when you think of when I've been working on the internet since '95, people were selling commodity products, and people like Amazon, and then clearly the CD sellers, and then you had a whole range of people coming in selling things which could be purchased anywhere, whether it be cameras or electronic goods or whatever it happened to be. They weren't very strongly branded environments, and they're quite different from the retail environments which we know offline. Offline, some of the time we'll buy from the supermarkets or the Targets, those sort of very sort of warehousey type environments. But other times we want to buy within a much more sort of encompassing or sort of a full shopping experience. And I think that we're seeing now the emergence of many more sites like RedBubble, sites like Etsy, which are a much more a full shopping experience, which give you a sense of being really engaged in that experience. You're browsing, you're looking, you're having a feeling of being immersed in the website, in the experience of what the website's about. And shopping is a component of that. And so my advice to for people coming along to e-commerce, unless you're going to be in that category of trying to sell the cheapest stuff. If you're just trying to sell the cheapest stuff, then you'll do that. But if you're really trying to, where the real value is created is about creating an immersive shopping experience. That will have a social component to it, that will have a whole look and feel of the website. It's more complex than just sort of simply saying, we're going to sell the cheapest DSLR camera, for example. To this, where I started, is we've thought a lot about what it is that people are actually buying when on RedBubble, and they're not just buying sort of something to fill a space in the wall. They're actually buying a connection, or they're buying something which is quite specific to them. So they see something for the Daniel Rangers, for example. It's because that particular piece of work connects to them, and so what we want to do is create those connections between the work and the shopper, or between the artist and the work and the shopper, and that's a full set of connections. So what RedBubble is trying to do there is saying we're not selling, we're not like IKEA, which is selling hundreds of the same images and trying to create something which is relatively uniform. We're actually trying to create things which are very different, and so we're trying to facilitate that, where there's effectively a unique shopping experience, because each of us are unique and we want very specific things, particularly with something which is as emotional as art. Really, it's about continuing to grow. We're thinking a lot, right now about 50% of all visitors and sales come out of the United States, so we need to increase, we're continuing to work on increasing our penetration in the United States. Is a big market where there's a lot of appeal. Europe is also extremely important to us. And so it's about, the platform in many respects is, well, not in many respects, the platform has been laid. Now it's a question of really getting out there and making sure we're marketing it as effectively as possible.
Think it all happens in Silicon Valley? You thought wrong.